What's up, and welcome back to Spinny Explains IT. So, this week, I want to jump into the internet. I'm going to kind of give the background and history of the internet and basically how it works. Again, super fundamental stuff. I'm not going to get to the depth of it all because it's pretty complicated, but I'm just going to give you the broader picture of what it's like when you're texting someone or sending an image to somebody, what's actually going on in the background. So, to begin, let's start with the internet and the history of it. So, the internet around the 1960s, there was this idea floating around of, hey, these computers that we have, how can we get it to communicate with one another? I want to be able to send something to someone that they can see. And this kind of started with universities. Universities were kind of the main places that had computers. So, what kind of happened is this idea started flowing around. People started working on it. And in 1969, the first ever message was being sent from UCLA all the way to Stanford. So, not a huge distance in terms of today, but at that time, it was pretty far. And so, it was done through the ARPANET, which is basically the governance network. And so, some key points from this, what had happened was, I believe the message was just login, and that's it, just the words login. Sent it over to Stanford, and the network and everything crashed. But it did get the first couple letters of it, which was a huge success because it meant that it was able to work. So by the end of that year of 1969, there were 4 computers that were able to be connected. That was UCLA, Stanford, UC Santa Barbara, and University of Utah. And really, the main purpose of it in the beginning was just to be able to send academic research, data, what they were finding. Nothing crazy as what we have today. Well, as it kept moving on through the years, the 70s, the 80s, a lot more universities were able to join this net, and they were able to share data and communicate with one another. So let's fast forward all the way to the 90s. So when the 90s came around, this is when basically they were kind of breaking off from people who were just universities to just everyday people could be able to get on if they had a computer. And so a man by the name of Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web. So what this meant was anyone who had an internet connection, most through dial-up, of course, would be able to hop onto the internet through any browser. At that time, there wasn't that many. Mosaic and Netscape were kind of the big ones at the time. And they were able to just search something and be able to go to the internet and go to the web page. And that was basically, the 90s was the birth of the internet as we know it today. The 2000s come around, you have the dot-com era. And that's really nothing too huge in the terms of history has changed since then. Just the ability to watch videos, look at pictures, music, download, and all that. But for the most part, being able for anyone to use the internet connection came around in the 90s. So that brings us to how the internet actually works. So to start it off, there's 2 simple things you need to know. There are basically 2 types of devices that are on the internet. There are clients and there are servers. A server is basically a special computer that is able to host, so it has like a direct connection to the internet, and it's able to host web pages, right? So basically you create a web page, and on that server you house your web page in its hard drive. So anyone who's trying to access it, that's how it displays it, through that server. Next, you have the clients. That's everybody's computer today. You know, your iPhone, whatever it may be, is considered a client to access the internet because you're just accessing it, you're not hosting anything. That's really the main difference. For simplicity's sake, like I said, I'm not going to go into the main details, but that's basically it. Let's break it down to how everything's being sent. So I want to access google.com. So what I'm going to do, I open up my browser, I send, hey, I want to go to google.com, right? Well, there's something called IP addresses, right? IP addresses are what each device has to identify itself. So you have your IP address, and I say I want to access Google, and let's say for simplicity's sake, let's say mine is 192.0.1.1. Okay, it's not really going to be that, but that's just going to be able to keep track. And I am trying to access Google, which is 192.0.2.1. So I type that in, and basically when I type in the name Google, it makes it to the IP address on the back end, and it goes and grabs it. So what's happening is I'm going to send this query through my internet, right? It's going to hit my personal router. It's then going to jump to another router, how many ever it has. You can trace those sometimes through the command prompt to see how many hops it's doing. But for simplicity's sake, let's say it just goes through 3 and it hits Google. And Google says, yep, I now have a connection with you. What would you like? And then you can search the web because you got in. Well, let's say now I wanted to send an image to someone, okay? So this is where the internet gets smart. It takes whatever you're sending and it breaks it up into packages, okay? So let's say you're sending a photo, it chops it up into 4 pieces, okay? And it goes through the internet. Like I said, it goes to the router, sends that first packet, and the next packet, the next packet, it goes to the next router, goes to the next router, and it keeps hopping until it hits its destination. Well, now you may be wondering, how does it know my computer from anyone else's in the house's computer if we have the same router? And so basically, it kind of keeps wrapping as it goes through. So I send it with the image that I want, I throw in my IP address. It hits the router, and then it puts its IP address on, and then hits the next router, and that router throws on its IP address. And it kind of establishes this route until it hits the place. And then it says, okay, this is what you sent. And so what's happening with the packets is it really just, goes down to zeros and ones. It builds that image all back together. It says, okay, this is packet one, this is packet 2, this is packet 3, this is packet 4, and it displays. Now, it's not going to take the same destination every time on the way back. Packets will go to different routers all the way through its destination, but that's kind of the point. So basically, the bare minimum way of looking at the internet. I have a photo, it breaks it up into packets, it sends it to my router, that router sends it to another router, and they're all going to be split going until it hits its destination, and once there, it'll rebuild it to build the photo. Sometimes you'll get the third packet first, or sometimes you'll get the first packet last. It really just depends on the way the traffic goes and how it hits. But understanding this, really just understanding the simplicity of the internet and how everything's getting broken up and sent, and it's going through a long process, really honestly makes you appreciate how quick the internet is today. Back then in the early 2000s, it would take forever. They could never even imagine the speeds that we have today. And so, when you get frustrated that your computers or something's taking a long time to load on your internet, you might be a little bit grateful that of what it's going through till it hits there. That's really all I had for the week, was just kind of internet stuff, just the bare minimum of what it is. Like I said, there's tons of intricacies, and there's the OSI model, there's the network layer, there's just all these different types of ways inside of how the computer sends things out, but in a very bare minimum, that is how the internet works. Tune in next week. I don't know. I got some other stuff I want to talk about. I'm probably going to jump into, packet loss of when you're streaming something, why it starts to buffer, go into that. So as the most part, that's really all I have. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.